Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Austrian Tunnel Safety session here in the frame of the Beyond the Tunnel Vision Conference. So I'm really happy to welcome you here on behalf of all those who supported in the preparation for this afternoon parallel session here with my colleagues from the ILF consulting engineers for their great support in the preparation phase. Since it's the first time experience for all of us, but we did our best to see that we can run here a smooth session with 4 presentations to come. So if we can see now the timetable, please, on the screen, then you see we have 4 presentations. And as you also see, it's utmost important to be in time. And how important that is, I learned during my 12 years of experience working in Switzerland. We have here 4 presentations, each of which should be presented within 15 minutes time. And afterwards, I think we can allow for a few question and answer sessions. So you see, you have also a chat function here. You can have questions in the live question answer Q&A session here. I will take care of that and hope that I can find a few questions here to be answered. And why do we need to be here very sharply in time? This is that we want to allow also people for changing between the different sessions. So we will really try to start sharply in time with the presentations, keep the timeline, and be then also by the time ready after having allowed a few questions. We tried to set up a very interesting program and a frame of topics in this afternoon, starting with a vision into operational tunnel and tunnel safety. This is the first presentation. After that, cybersecurity is the next topic where we think it's really in its importance growing in parallel with the level of digitalization which we experience. So that is the next perspective. And after that, then we will see that innovation can only really come into reality if it also finds entry into the regulation. That will be the third presentation in our tunnel safety chapter here. And finally then, we have one research project that was carried out in Switzerland. And this research project should highlight also the need for the action that is mentioned in the vision paper also, the need for future research topics for further investigations with regards to keeping the operational tunnel safety on the level which we have achieved in the last and recent years. So I think by having said that, I would like to start with the first presentation. The first presentation is about new operational road tunnel safety issues. Next to myself, I want to welcome my colleague Ingo Kaundinya, and the two of us, we will give the first presentation. If I start with, just check the slide, with introducing myself. So I'm here in the role as the chairperson of ITA COSUF. We developed this vision paper here together with Piag. This was a process which has now run over a couple of months, if not to say years, since we want to really see the entire perspective of all relevant stakeholders and include that to formulate a vision on what we think, how the future should be perceived. So, and with that, I want to just quickly hand over to Ingo, please, for quickly introducing yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ingo Kaundinya. I work for Federal Highway Research Institute in Germany, BAST. But here today I'm in the role of the chairman of the Piag Committee 4.4 tunnels.
Okay, thank you for that. So starting with a short introduction into ITA COSUF, for those who are not so familiar with that. ITA COSUF is the first committee of the ITA, of the International Tunneling and Underground Space Association, and it was founded in the frame of the WTC in Istanbul in the year 2005. It's the Committee on Operational Safety of Underground Facilities, And scope-wise, we do cover all types of underground transportation facilities. So not only road tunnels, rail tunnels, but also metro tunnels or any underground in urban environment transportation facilities, parking spaces, to see all these aspects of movements which we have in enclosed spaces. Members include authorities, consultants, academia, industry, contractors, operators, safety officers, etc. So what you see is we do not only see the problem through one perspective, but we really want to have this multiple view on one and the same thing, that we have this holistic view, the holistic approach on operational safety of underground facilities. The focus, of course, is underground safety and security. And our vision, our self-understanding of ITA COSUF is that ITA COSUF wants to be the platform for communication on operational safety and security.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to briefly present Piag. So Piag is the World Road Association, founded in 1909 as a non-profit, non-political association. The goal of Piag is to organize exchange of knowledge on all matters related to road transport and on roads. The activities of the association are guided by a strategic plan of 4 years. And the ITA Committee on tunnels, on road tunnels, is one of 19 committees in Piag. We have approximately 130 members worldwide, and the work in our TC is organized in regular meetings of the TC, and we have 7 working groups. And the impact of vehicles with new energy carriers on tunnel safety and tunnel operation is one important topic of the current strategic plan of Piag. Next.
With that, I want to tell you a little bit about the storyline of our vision paper, so that you get an understanding of where all these things started and where it comes from. So there have been quite some research projects with ITA COSUF involvement, projects focusing on different aspects like new energy carrier, like the environment, but always, of course, operational, organizational, and practical aspects. And what came out here was that we identified kind of a research need, since we thought there might be low coverage in actual research framework programs to this particular problem of this new framing now with alternative energy carriers in transportation means that this is underrepresented probably in the next programs. So we identified the need for a consolidated expression of research needs, and this should be find entrance in this vision paper and also in expert group workshops. To see a bit of the history, we see here a life cycle comparison of transportation infrastructure versus automobility, where I probably start in the bottom part of the slide, where you see tunnel infrastructure may be made for approximately, I would say, 1 century. So about 100 years when we see when the old tunnels have been built, when we see newer tunnels. We have also heard in the previous plenary session the topics of refurbishment. So 100 of years is a time span which we take into consideration when we are talking about transportation infrastructure. When we now see the forecasts which are linked with transportation, with vehicles, then we see that we are counting here single years. We are counting here 5 years, probably 10 years. And we see starting from 2020, where we are now, that we have a big coming spread of the different fuel system in the transportation means. And so we see, okay, compared to the lifespan of a tunnel, this is really a much more and highly developing part of the game in comparison to the infrastructure. So research projects which we have seen so far, or which are actually running with involvement of BAM, FOCTEX, TUBA, for example, is the safety of new energy carrier vehicles in urban underground transportation infrastructure. So this is one of the German national research projects taking care of that particular problem at the moment. What is part of the project there is they're doing incident analysis. They want to build a situation awareness. So what we see here is from an experience which was made by the fire brigade in Landeck with an incident with an electrical vehicle car fire in front of one of their tunnels, popping up with questions like, what kind of car is that? What would it be if that just happened a few meters later than it would have been in the tunnel? What does it have an impact on the strategy of the firefighters? So these, I think, are the relevant questions. Incident analysis, what is the relevant aspect? Next question. Heat release rate comparisons. That's definitely not the only thing. This is probably one aspect. New energy carrier identification when it comes to an incident. So how do they know which energy carriers are involved? Safety of first responders, of course, is of utmost importance. So this is an aspect covered in the Sovereign project. Another project where we have the last presentation of this afternoon session here, the fourth presentation, is about e-mobility and tunnel safety with the partners Amsteine Waltert, the Hagerbach Test Gallery, and also the C2. They have been carrying out a very interesting set of tests, and as I have announced already, we will see a few slides and the whole presentation in the very afternoon as the last session. And with that, I would like to hand over again to Ingo to discuss a little bit the situation analysis with NEC-related topics.
Yes, thank you, Max. So taking the before mentioned research results on new energy carriers mentioned by Max into account, we have the following situation. There are some known unknowns on new energy carriers which must be investigated further. These are, as mentioned by Max, the impact on the heat release rate. So what is the impact of new energy carriers of substances releases? So what is the toxicity and the distribution in space and time of these substances? And most important, what is the impact on the user coming from these substances? So incident management is a very important topic, impact on tunnel operation and on the rescue services. The emerging risks due to these new hazards are very important to identify, and operational issues, for example, for parking garages, you have the charging issue. Next. So, but there are some unknowns, like specific hazards and scenarios. Which infrastructure parts are affected and how are they affected? And what could be possible mitigation measures? And in order to identify these issues, an expert group meeting was organized in February last year in Utrecht. This was a joint initiative of ITA COSUF in cooperation with Piag. So there were two different sessions in this expert group meeting. The first part was a so-called creative or brainstorming session aimed to identify the unknowns. So these were the expected results of these creative sessions were the relevant scenario descriptions, the identification of new hazards. And the second part of this expert group meeting was the analysis session. There we had as an expected results the definition of research questions, and we have qualified input to the ITA COSUF vision paper. The result of the brainstorming and this creative session was a set of relevant scenarios which were clustered in different groups according to the different fire classes, like electric fires or liquid fires, for example, LPG fire, or gaseous fires, like, for example, CNG or LNG fires. So this was grouped and clustered here in this scenario chart. The second result of the creative session was the identification of the relevant hazards, namely the hazards for the tunnel user, for example, release of toxic gases or substances, the hazards for first responders, like, for example, the possibility of a thermal runaway for a battery fire, how to extinguish a fire, and these questions. Hazards for owners and operators, like the pollution or contamination of underground facilities, how to clean these structures and equipment after an accident, and how to come back to normal operation quickly. This is very important for an operator. And special hazards for underground parking garages, like fires due to charging of electric vehicles. With this, I would like to hand over to Max again for the research questions.
Yeah, so what we did then afterwards, we tried to cluster kind of topic-wise always questions, because when you're just collecting questions and ideas, that's a process where you very quickly go into the technical detail. And we thought, okay, for a vision paper, it cannot be that we're just listing a list of technical questions. So we tried to cluster them around certain topics. And the first of that, for example, would be questions of accident rates and risks, since we know currently when you're doing risk analysis and risk management, you always refer on historical data. So this is part of the actual process. And of course, if it comes to these new and alternative systems, we are lacking these historical data. So the question is how to cope with that. Of course, you cannot just create them, but you need to kind of be alerted from the very beginning. And you really need to think, okay, how do you make your new estimates? How do you come to the right figures? And how probably also do you think of uncertainties which you may have in another way, since you are lacking these historical data. So this is one very relevant aspect in our opinion, or in the experts' opinion, was this accident rates and the risks. I think the next important thing is the question of fire development and ventilation, since this is a key issue for escape route design and also for the safety, of course, of the normal operation of the system. There were many technical questions, of course. It comes very fast to ventilation speed, cross sections, geometries, especially geometries of complex underground facilities, like a metro station, for example. And I think there are very many different aspects or single parameters which may have an influence, like, for example, when you have fires with battery cars, smoke volumes that may be produced may be different from a similar car fire with probably also a similar heat release rate, but just with these conventional combustion engines. So these and some other questions could be relevant for the fire development and the ventilation area. The questions of firefighting, of course, that's a very relevant one. I learned that also during a set of latest research tests where I was really happy to be able to participate. So firefighters, of course, they have their routines, they have their procedures, and when they're approaching a fire in an underground space, they have now probably new hazards, they have new situations, and they also need probably new methods to assess the situation and see how can they cope with that. If I just see here this entire list and refer to a few of them, expected poisonous substances, for example. Are these gases, are they somewhere on claddings or on ceilings? Are they on the ground? Are they then in the water, in the wastewater after the incident? So these questions are of a very high relevance for the firefighters. Additional measures pre or post incident. So as we all know, is that it's very important that we go into operation after an incident afterwards. So are there any measures? We have heard that before in the plenary session, that avoidance, that's the best strategy with regards to incidents. So don't let them even happen, so to say. So what can we do pre an incident to improve the situation? What can we do afterwards? And finally, then also the question of pre and post incident management and coming back to the operation of the facility. So we know from the experience of incidents from the past that there have been some tunnel fires where you have huge damages and a very long time closing down then the transportation infrastructure. But there are also installations possible where you can really very quickly react and kind of 1.5 hours after an incident be back into normal operation. And that, of course, makes a huge difference. Just to give you a feeling on the distribution of these research questions. We tried to show that a little bit with this kind of sketch here. So we have accident rates and risks. We have fire development and ventilation. So those are the engineering topics. That's making in total a bit less than half of the game, and a bit more than half of the game is really then linked to the operational part, to firefighting, to additional measures, and to the incident management. So just the pure figures of problems which popped up during these workshops give a feeling on where the relevant things may be seen. Outlook for the next times is that we have in the beginning of December the Tunnel Safety and Ventilation Conference. It will also be a virtual conference, of course, with one session on new energy carriers. We have ITA COSUF together with Piag planned a workshop for next year in autumn, in November. So hopefully that can be a physical workshop, since we also really like, of course, our social events, which we usually organize in the frame of these events. We want to provide input for future work programs for Horizon Europe, really with regards to specific topics where we see needs that should be covered in order to provide this added value when refurbishing tunnels, and to really add also value for operators and owners. And apart from that, of course, also consortium building for future research projects. So that's the next steps which we think we should go. And if you have questions, please get in contact with either Ingo or myself. So you see here the mail addresses in the presentation. You will also have them on the website of the conference, and you will of course also find them on the websites of ITA COSUF or Piag. If I now take a look in the question and answer session, I think there is, at the moment, I can't see here a question. So I'm not sure whether I'm doing that wrong or not. However, there is one thing which we probably wanted to highlight just quickly, or ask to Piag, question to Ingo, and this is related with smart mobility. This is an important topic in the vision paper, and the question would be, what is especially important, or is this in fact even important also for Piag? So what do you think about that?
Yes, as mentioned in the plenary session, smart mobility is indeed a very important topic also for Piag. And for this presentation, we skipped this topic because we had only this 15 minutes presentation. But I think it's, besides the new energy carrier topic, this is very important to talk about smart mobility. And we in Piag, we have this topic also in our strategic plan. We are dealing with ITS in tunnels in a working group. And we will there identify the main expectations of the tunnel community regarding new ITS technologies. There's a lot of new ITS technologies, and if you see about the development, there's not much done about tunnels so far. So how do these technologies affect tunnel safety, and how do these affect tunnel operation? This is not a big part for industry or for research for the moment. So this is why we think that this topic should be investigated more in detail. Okay. Because I think we have some knowledge gaps there.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks to the entire audience. I think we have here 53 persons watching the presentation. Thanks for joining us. I think we need to close now the session quite immediately, and I hope to see you in the next session, where we see the cybersecurity presentation. See you then. Thank you. Bye-bye.